from the Stereo Sound Record Studios, your home for the best in unsigned and indie punk, rock, and metal. This is The Mosh Pit with your host, Wes Everett.
There it is.
Awesome.
Cool.
Perfect.
Welcome to The Mosh Pit. It's your host, Wes, and I am here with Cam from Altamadum. How you doing, man?
Good. It's a gorgeous day here in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada. So that's where I'm joining from. And thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Definitely excited to talk to you about the new album you've got out, the 3 songs from that album. But first, I want to know something. What's the weather like?
Actually is surprisingly well, right? There's a stigma around Canada being cold all the time. And that's not the case. Not today anyways. It's like plus 30. So it's a warm day for us in terms of summer weather and stuff like that. So it's a gorgeous day. Definitely, summer's too short. So want to definitely capitalize on the nice weather before it's supposed to be a bad winter apparently. So
oh joy. And anytime it comes through Canada, it always drifts down here to us.
Nice. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, blaming it all on you.
Yeah.
Oh man. So you guys, y'all were scheduled for a festival, got canceled due to the lockdown, government, yada yada. Who all was on that card? Who are you looking forward to playing with on that show?
So it was going to be a great festival because it was like a 5-day festival. And there's this park in Thunder Bay, it's called Chippewa, and it was quite a large event, and it was 5 days, live music, vendors. It was supposed to be a really big thing, right? And what happened is, it was lack of government funding due to the pandemic. It was the story that we were told, and it was kind of a bummer because we were supposed to headline night 4. So we were very excited, and actually a few of the members of the band, we were playing like a double bill because there's a well-known Canadian band called The Tragically Hip. And we were supposed to be covering them, and then Altamadum headlining the actual night 4. So it was going to be a lot of fun. But and in terms of people we were looking forward to playing with, it was pretty diverse. So I think it was pretty cool because there was this young group that's kind of coming up, and they're a little bit more poppy, alternative, and more of that hard rock, element. And then there was like some Celtic stuff. Like it was just a very diverse bill, and it was full day. So we were right at the end. We were right at the end of the festival on day 4. So we were really looking forward to that. But I mean, there's going to be a lot of other festivals and opportunities coming. So we're getting back into that live music element of what we do, because that's essentially how we started. We started as a live band when we were 16. My drummer Brendan and I have been together since grade 9, and we carved our chops kind of on the local scene here in Thunder Bay, and that was how we started, right? But even before we were able to get into the studio, which was a huge treat later on. But yeah, so we're looking forward to getting back to that side of what we do for sure.
Very cool, man. I hate to hear that about the festival. Music Midtown down here in Atlanta just got canceled for a completely different reason. I'm not even getting into that hornet's nest. So you guys have been a band since you were... Have you been Altamadum since you guys that long?
Yeah. My drummer and I we connected in grade 9 in high school, and we just loved playing music together. He was out in the country and I was in the city, and being 16, we really didn't have a way to get to one another. We couldn't really get together, so that was a big thing. And I remember giving him my MP3 player, and he took it home and he did this big drum solo on it, and I just to see if it was even worth it, right, to venture out into the country to get together with him, and it definitely was, because I was just blown away by his drumming. To this day, he's still one of my all-time favorite drummers. So so he and I connected, and then from there we needed a name, right? So I remember being in science class, I think in grade 9, and we had a list of names. Half of them were just absolutely ridiculous names. Like, I'm just so happy we didn't go with any of those names. And I think it was Brendan who actually suggested Altamadum as being an option, and I knew that had to be taken. So I took my eraser to it and switched some of the letters so it would still sound like Altamadum, but it would appear differently and it would look cool, and to my understanding. But that's the hardest part. One of the hardest parts about starting a band, I find, is creating a name, right? Because we had so many goals and ambitions as artists, and we had this natural chemistry that just came out, and it was just amazing, right? And I would look forward to him, he and I getting together and jamming again, just because I couldn't produce that sound by myself, right? So
Sudden death, mind control.
glad you guys are still together putting out awesome music because we like
Thank you.
playing it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. No, that's awesome.
So speaking of playing music, you guys have released 3 singles from the new album, full length. You want to talk us through each single, how they kind of differ from each other, but still stay that same Altamadum sound?
Totally. Yeah. It's interesting because our last album in 2021, it was called Born in the Afterglow, and it was a lot more atmospheric than anything we've done. It was very like a lot of ambient, like I was experimenting with a lot of different sounds in the studio, and I was happy with how that album turned out because it was exactly what I envisioned it to be. And all 4 of us, just in my opinion, just did a really kind of stepped outside of our comfort zone on that one. But my singer Sam Muka and I, we got together and we decided that this new album was going to be like the complete opposite of that. We wanted to do something very up tempo from start to finish, very dancey. So we incorporated a lot of electronic elements with like hard rock, Iron Maiden inspired, leads on top. So it was really, really different. Then my singer put this like poppy almost melody on top of with these very catchy choruses. That's what it was designed to be. So the first song, Run From You, it was dropped in March. And since then we've staggered it like every 2 months has been kind of our focus in terms of releasing the next one. But Run From You it's very like late 90s techno style, mixed with like really intense like double kick drumming and some really cool guitar leads. And then this poppy vocal on the top that's very kind of repetitive, but it's like an earworm, right? And that's how it was designed. I remember we had a lot of fun like in the studio making that one because it was just so different than anything I've ever heard. Like it encompassed a lot of the different styles of music that we like separately, and we were able to collectively all bring it together into one sound that just sounded incredibly unique. And then 2 months after, we released In My Blood, which is the title track on the album. And that was kind of like when we were creating that, we knew that was like the sure shot kind of radio friendly song, right? That was once again very, very hooky. And sure enough, that we were really pushing that one, and very, very proud of all of them. But that one it's cool because it's, once again, all the electronic elements are actually done by Sam playing the piano. So none of it is so it's all instruments that are being played throughout the album. And then last week we released another single called Upon Yourself, and that's going to be the final single before the album drops. And that's one of my personal favorites on the album, actually, is the last one, Upon Yourself, just because it's, once again, just sounds just, I don't know, when I listen to music I see color, and that one for me is just very colorful, so yeah.
Very cool, man. That's awesome. I love hearing the behind the scenes stories of the songs and how they come together. If you were to release a 4th song, do you have a particular one in mind that you absolutely would?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if the other guys would be into it. It's called, the 4th one would be called All I Do. And it has, all of the songs are very fast paced, but this one has some really beautiful piano lines in it. So it goes from this like up tempo kind of, like heavy rock sound to this just complete drop where it goes into this, beautiful piano little thing. And a singer's just singing alone with the piano. It's gorgeous, right? And also to that, the line that he's singing when it goes just to the piano, it's, when we were writing it, it got stuck in my head like all the time, and I'd be humming it and I wouldn't even really realize what it was. You know what I mean? Yeah. I didn't realize it was one of our little, songs or whatever like that. So it was just one of those things that I knew that if it got stuck in my head, that would probably appeal to that larger audience, right? So
very cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your influences, from growing up. Who were the bands that you gravitated toward that really shaped your sound?
So my story is different. Like all 4 of us have complete different influences, but a lot of them overlap too. I got turned on to my dad's record collection, actually. That was my big gateway into music, and driving around with him in the truck when I was a little boy. And Led Zeppelin was one of the biggest influences for me early on. And Guns N' Roses was another huge one. Slash, his playing, like many other guitar players, it was just infectious. I remember Appetite for Destruction was the for me, that was like the holy grail of guitar playing. So I had to learn that from start to finish. And and also Rush, like, another Canadian band, but Rush was a big influence, Alex Lifeson, but primarily English stuff. Actually, I was inspired by a lot of like the 60s, like influences, 70s, and like the Yardbirds, Zeppelin, Deep Purple, just anything that came from England. And then that translated to like more alternative, like Joy Division, the Smiths, all the way to like present day, 90s alternative stuff or whatever. But I'm a huge fan of like primarily North American music and English music. I'd say would be my two just big benchmarks, I think, in terms of that. Lately I've kind of drawn more towards like some of the like Lindsey Buckingham from Fleetwood Mac with a finger picking, and just some of the less flashier players like Johnny Marr too from the Smiths, where the guitar playing is super intricate, but it's not as in your face, right? So it's like you listen to it and it's like you try to learn it, and it's like I have a hell of a time trying to learn some of this stuff, right? Because it's like it's just so intricate with the finger picking. So those are some of my personal current influences, but if you asked any one of us, it would be very drastically different. So.
Well, I get that. And, a lot of times that's really good for a band because they've got those different influences that can kind of come together. And it's like, wow, this really works.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the cool part about, I think, so I've heard about our sound is just the fact that we're all very diverse in what we listen to. And then we bring that all together. Mm-hmm. And then it turns into something that's not really replicated by anyone else that we've heard. So
Cassidy Paris, Wannabe.
Are you gonna get all dressed up tonight? In the mirror, get your hair and make it right.
as far as you're writing your songs, is there a particular way that you guys write them? Do you come up with lyrics first? Do you come up with a riff first, or is it just a mix?
Honestly, it's a bit of a mix. Typically, we don't come up with the lyrics first, and it's usually Sam or James, my singer and bass player, that come up with the lyrics. Brendan and I are heavily responsible for coming up with like the music, like the writing of the orchestration of the music. And typically that's what happens first. Like in the past, it's just been solely, we have our own studio too in Thunder Bay, which is hugely helpful. We have our own producer and web designer. So it's like we're 6 members, but we're 4 musicians. So that really allows us to kind of write music very quickly, or experiment with different sounds quickly. So, which is huge. That's amazing. And on this last album, it started actually the last 2 albums, it was Sam having ideas and he was able to record at home. And then he sent us just these little ideas of some piano bits and some vocals. And I grabbed them, took them to the studio. And then our producer, Russ, we'd listen to them together. And then Brendan, Russ, and I would build them into what they are musically, like a full orchestration, right? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, James would come put his bass on, and then Sam would come and finalize the vocals. And then that's how we wrote the last 2 albums, right, through the pandemic. So it's been pretty amazing that Sam can record at home, but even more amazing that we have our studio, Thunder Sound Studio, and Russ Elder, who's our producer, who's, if we didn't have him, I don't know what we would do through the pandemic, because it was pretty rough here in Northwestern Ontario. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. As far as the pandemic goes, was it creatively stifling, or did it actually help you guys kind of write more?
I would say, you know what, it was stifling in the sense of the fact that we couldn't get together, and that drove a wedge in parts of what we do. But in terms of the creative process, I feel like, I don't know if we wrote any quicker. I feel like there was no distractions. Like there were no shows. There was things that we could just kind of eliminate, and we could, when it made sense to, right, get to the studio and just hammer out these ideas, right? So I'd say in some ways it actually sped up the process, probably in songwriting, and just in eliminating distractions, but it hindered the process in terms of that natural chemistry that you get with 4 guys in a room writing music. So pro and con, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Sorry, lost my train of thought on that one. What's been your biggest challenge as a band other than the pandemic?
Biggest challenge, probably, I would say probably, this is going to sound bad, but personalities. But I think every, and I'm not saying that we're unique to that situation, but I think that when you have 4 musicians, but 6 components in Altamadum, you know, Russ and Rich being included in that, the web designer and producer, and we're all as passionate about what we do as we are. I think that, you know, you have differences of opinion, right? In certain situations, creative differences, but that's only because we're all passionate about what we do, right? And I have so many stories, honestly, about us, you know, just having just these little arguments in the studio. But once again, it resulted in a better finished product, right? Like all of those, you know, frustrating conversations at the time about trying to agree on a decision, like a small decision, it results in a better end result, in my opinion. So once again, I'd say that's the biggest thing, is that we all have our own opinions on how music should be written and how a song should be crafted and constructed. And they don't always align with one another, right? So we'll butt heads at times, right? But like I said, it's pretty mild, I think, in comparison to some other bands that, you know, you watch documentaries of bands just absolutely blowing up in the studio and getting into fist fights. We've never done that, right? Yet. But that's important to say. But yeah, no, it's I'd say that's probably a challenge at times, but a good challenge, necessary. So
yeah. Let's flip that over and say, what's your biggest accomplishment as a band today?
Oh man, there's quite a few. We've been fortunate enough. You know what, Wes, I think like one of the things about this pandemic too is it's allowed us to connect with like people such as yourselves and have a lot of these conversations, which is amazing, right? Mm-hmm. But one of the biggest things, we got representation from a record label in America, I think in 2014, and it's from the Depths Entertainment. They're out of Reading, Pennsylvania. And and yeah, and they're amazing. And they actually got our first single on our second album, Fallen Angels, on the radio in Scotland.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and that was crazy because, like I mentioned earlier, one of my earliest childhood memories was driving around with my dad in his truck listening to radio, right?
Yeah.
And we were able to tune in here, and it was a record label showcase. So it was coming, we're in Canada, it was coming from the States and being broadcasted in the UK. And we were able to dial it in on my dad's sound system in the basement. He and I were sitting next to each other, and it was like a goosebump feeling, right? It was like, oh man, our song's on the radio. Like, I think every artist or anyone who like holds an instrument, a guitar or whatever, at some point in time, thinks about that possibly happening. So it was awesome. And RJ Bailey was the DJ, and shout out to him because he, like I said, he gave us a lot of airplay in the early days of that time, in our early 20s. And that was just, just a really, really cool, fun time. And we were very creative. Not saying we're not now, but we had a really creative growth spurt in that time. Right. So it was, it was cool. And then also just any kind of radio or magazine or people, what I get a kick out of today is just hearing just anybody, anywhere around the world listening to our music and, saying something about it, whether it's good or bad. Right. And how they interpret that song. I think for me, that's, I don't know, that's just a really, really special thing, right? That we're able to connect through music. And so for me, that I always get a kick out of that today. So
that's awesome, man. That is awesome. I love to hear stories like that. I love to hear, the bands that are making waves and doing stuff. So
absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you for sitting in on the Mosh Pit.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Saved by Scarlet, Black Knight.
Chasing down the beast that brought this pain. When you hear the bells at dawn, standing up, you're not the only one. How can I feel safe now that you're gone? Like a black knight riding into the storm. Hold on to me as we rise to defend. Be the hope as we're fighting the dragon again. Your hands, they shake, proceeding towards your fate. Lives of others now are resting upon your name. When all is said and done, we will rise like angels into the sun. How can I feel safe now that you're gone? Like a black knight riding into the storm. Hold on to me as we rise to defend. Be the hope as we're fighting the dragon again.
Do you have any advice for any bands trying to make a name for themselves?
Yeah, the thing that worked, so for us, like we weren't, I don't know, we were always concerned about getting our music heard, but we were less concerned about what other people thought. Like in the early days, like I was mentioning, we kind of cut our teeth on the local music scene. We didn't have Russ, we didn't have Thunder Sound Studio. This was in our teens, and we'd never recorded in a studio before. And we were just playing a lot of live shows. And through that process, we were doing, like, there was a lot of like metalcore bands. And I don't get me wrong, I love metalcore music and stuff, but we just aren't that, and we definitely weren't at that time. So, but that's the way the music scene was going. So we were kind of looked at as like the ugly stepchild of the music scene in the city. So it was like, and we didn't care though. Like, I mean, it was defeating because we couldn't get into, it felt like we couldn't get into certain venues because it was very cliquey. And we just weren't a part of that clique at that time, but we were very true to our art, and we believed in what we did, as cliche as that sounds, right? But we didn't really care. We just knew that we were going to write the music that we wanted to write, and we were going to bring something to the table that hasn't been brought yet, or to our knowledge, right? Like we wanted to write new ideas and new songs and everything else like that we just hadn't heard, because I don't really see the point of replicating another band, right? Like, I love AC/DC, but I don't see the point in writing an AC/DC song, because if I want to listen to AC/DC, I'm going to listen to them, right? Like I'm going to listen to the OGs, right? So I'm not going to do, so for us, I wanted to write something very, very different. And so that, I think that was the most gratifying experience as a new artist, is that we started becoming accepted little by little. And when we did it felt good, because it felt like we were standing up as our own artist, as our own individual artists, right? And the one biggest thing that we get today too constructively is Sam's voice is very different than anything else, right? It's very unique, and so some people love it, some people hate it, right? But like I said, for me, it's just cool that people are listening to the music, right? So, and I love Sam's voice, obviously, and but I love hearing what other people have to say around that. But it's I'd say like my advice for new artists is just, create your own original sound. Don't try to do what other people, do. Because I just don't see there being much of a point to that. And I know a lot of artists, try to do that because they're trying to capitalize off, someone's success or right. And it's a bit, and I understand that it's a business too, right? Like it's a business, but for us, it's more the art first, like art first and foremost. And then if other people hear it and other people are gravitated towards it or impact someone else, that's just insane. That just still to this day blows my mind. So staying true to the art, and also just, believing in what you do, and not getting defeated, because we got our share of bad press, right? Like we got people who just absolutely loved it, and we got people who just didn't get it, right? And who were just kind of like, wow, I don't really understand the singer's voice, or like this, I don't really know if I like this, right? But hey, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to challenge the listener to either like it or hate it, right? We don't want to be one of those bands that people are like, oh, they're all right. I would much rather someone say they hate us or they don't like our sound than they're okay.
Yeah. Pick a side, do your thing. But I don't know, man. I love that. I love that, you guys have that sound. I like it personally. I'm just gonna say that.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Looking forward to playing the new track on this episode, which I'll probably cut it in right here. As far as goals for the next year, what are your top 3?
Oh, in the next year. Well, my goal this year actually was to release new music. So we were able to release those 3 singles. And then what I wanted to do was I wanted to do a good size like press run, right? And really have like exactly like what we're doing now, have a good conversation, and really kind of cross-pollinate people from all over the world, right? So, and I think that's, once again, that's a beautiful thing. So we've been fortunate enough to have a pretty good one on the stretch of just the last 3 singles. But my goal in the next year would be, we played another live show. We want to play more live shows, I think, in the next year. And I want to drop this album finally, because I'm just dying for people to hear it, right? Like the singles are amazing, but I want people to hear it the way that, from start to finish, like the whole In My Blood album, track 1 to track 10. And I think that, and I want to hear the feedback around that. But like I mentioned earlier, I think what we're going to do is we're going to eventually write new music, because that's just in our nature, right? we've been described as a prolific band, so we're very quick to write new music and just get it out there. So whether it's in the shape of singles or it's in the shape of, you know, a deluxe edition or something along those lines, even rehashing, we're having a 10-year anniversary of our first album next year. So I think we're good. There was some talk about maybe rehashing some of those songs and redoing them and then releasing them on all the platforms, just because we were in an early stage of writing where we were just figuring out what it meant to record in our studio, record to a metronome. Like, we had no idea how to do that. Like, that's a whole other ball game, right? Is to be like a disciplined musician. We just ran around on a stage, you know, for an hour, right? But to sit there and actually play with a metronome, that was a whole other craft in itself. So we have a lot of new tricks too, and our producer has been, you know, just like I said, phenomenal. So we want to take some of those songs and we want to kind of breathe new life into them and re-release them maybe to an audience that's never heard that before. Because the first 2 albums were not released digitally. They were just released in a hard copy. So we want to use that as an excuse to basically be able to, you know, allow people from all over to hear some of these songs that we started out with and that we believe in. So I don't know how that's going to land, if we're just going to be releasing singles or it's going to be another body of work per se, but I would like to do that because it's a good excuse to do that.
Altamadum, upon yourself.
would there be any songs like any that you guys haven't released yet? Would there be a couple of bonus tracks on that if you were to do a full?
Yes. Yeah, there was actually 2 songs that didn't make the cut on the In My Blood album, and we might just release them as demos. One was just, it's called Living Paranoid, and it was just super different, like it almost like haunting.
Mm-hmm.
Like it had like such an eerie feel to it, and it just sounded so different. Like I remember playing it for my dad, and he was like, "Oh, that's," I could tell he loved it, right? And I told him, "Oh, that's not making the album." He's like, "Oh, okay." Like you could see he was a little bit bummed by that. All right, that's how I interpreted it. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, so we might just like, they're missing a few verses. Like I think each one of them's missing a verse, but we might just drop them the way that they are, release them that way, and then just have them be heard, you know, that way. Because I really like those 2 songs that didn't make the cut. They didn't make the cut because they didn't fit in the flow of the album. Yeah. Like I said, it's a very dancey, up-tempo, hard rock album from start to finish, and they didn't really fit that mold because they were just too different. But I still would like to release them, and this might be a good excuse to do that.
Very cool, man. I'm looking forward to whatever decision you guys make, because you know we're gonna play it here. And of course, I'm gonna throw it on my phone. I'm gonna listen to it when I'm on the road, like all the time.
Oh, sick! That's awesome, Wes.
Well, man, I appreciate you sitting down on this interview. I appreciate, you know, anytime you want to come on, chat, talk about anything new that you've got upcoming.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Very cool. And just go ahead and plug your socials. Where can everybody find Altamadum?
Yeah, so we have a website, altamadum.com, spelled Altamadum, or you can even just Google Altamadum. That's the other cool part about having that specific name, is that if you type it in right, it's, you know, you're not going to get it mixed with anything else. And so yeah, altamadum.com, or the other big one that we use is Instagram. Just that way it's spelled Altamadum. And I'd love to hear that. That's actually, I'm the one who kind of leads that part of our social media. So if people want to get in touch with us, I'm really quick to respond on our Instagram. And I'm, like I said, I love to hear, you know, from people, good or bad. It's all good stuff. And also I try to keep that up to date with news and just different things that are coming down the pipe, and different things that we have going on, whether it's shows, music releases, just other things that we're doing. Obviously, this show, I'll be definitely sharing that. And yeah, also Twitter, same spelling, Facebook. We kind of all have our own like designated lane. Mine's the Instagram lane, and then my drummer's Facebook, bass player's Twitter. So then our web designer Richard takes care of the website. So it's any one of those facets, but like I said, Instagram for me would probably be the best to reach out and just to stay in the loop with what's going on.
Very cool. We'll be sure to plug all those. I'll tag you on all socials when this one drops. Speaking of all socials, what was I about to say? This is going to be cut out of the interview anyway, so
that's cool.
Anything that you want to tag us on, anything that anything that you share as far as music goes, tag us. We'll be glad to help share it as well. So beautiful.
Yeah, there'll be a lot kind of coming up, and then we hope to do another, press run and stuff when the album comes out in September. So yeah, we'll definitely be in touch for that, because I'd love to do, more stuff like that and have more conversations. And, like I said, just we're really excited about this album. And to our earlier point, I think the pandemic did play a bit of a role at, indirectly inspiring some of this stuff, just because of, I don't think we have a song on there that's written specifically about that, but it's primarily about relationships, like dysfunctional relationships, and it's kind of dark in elements and romantic in elements. Like it's just, that's the kind of music I'm into, is really darker, style music that has some, little hopeful pieces in it too. But like I said, very up tempo on this one. So let's stay in touch, and let's definitely do that. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Like I said, I usually try to do a 6-month follow-up. So,
beautiful.
Maybe we can talk again either before the end of the year or just after the beginning of 23. So
amazing. That'd be awesome, Wes.
Cool. Sure. Well, keep in touch, man. I really enjoyed this, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Take care, Wes.
You too, buddy. Bye.
Hey, buddy. Bye-bye.
The Reckoning, Payback's a Bitch.
Payback's a bitch. I'm the bitch. Payback. I'll flick the switch. Karma will attack. attack. Payback's a bitch. I'm the bitch, paying it back. I'll flip the switch. Karma will attack. Mistook my kindness for weak. Now I'm stronger than I've ever been. And I shall reign while you suffer your fate. Payback's a bitch. I'm the bitch, paying it back. I'll flick the switch. Karma will attack. Payback's a bitch. I'm the bitch, paying it back. I'll flick the switch. Karma will attack. I'm the bitch, paying it back. I'll flick the switch. Karma will attack. Payback's a bitch. I'm the bitch, paying it back. I'll flick the switch. Karma will attack. Talk your shit to someone else. I take pleasure in your pain. Deep and dark inside your me. You'll see. Forever free. Payback's a bitch. I'm the bitch, paying it back. I flick the switch. Karma will attack. Payback's a bitch. I'm the bitch, paying it back. I'll flick the switch. Karma will attack. I'm the angel with black wings. Torn and tattered, battered and beat. But you can't fucking stop